On the nail. But here it is, 10 o'clock, and we are saying the Conservatives are the largest party. And here are the figures which we have. Quite remarkable, this exit poll. The Conservatives on 316. That's up 9 since the last election in 2010. Ed Miliband for Labour, 77 behind him at 239, down 19 from the last election. And the other parties, the Liberal Democrats and the Scottish National Party. Look at the Scottish National Party. 58 for Nicola Sturgeon. That's every seat but one in Scotland taken by the SNP. Nick Clegg for the Liberal Democrats on 10. That's down 47 from the last election. UKIP, we're saying on 2. Treat that with caution because it's a new entry in a sense in this game. It's difficult to work out in places where UKIP hasn't stood before what it'll be like, but that's what we're saying at the moment. 2 for UKIP. So that's the remarkable scene that our exit poll is revealing. We shall discover when the first results start coming in how accurate it is. But if that is the story, it is a quite sensational story. Nick.
Sensational, David, and extreme.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.
I, Dave Smith, Acting Returning Officer, hereby give notice that the total number of votes for each candidate for the Houghton and Sunderland South constituency is as follows. Richard Peter Elvin, UK Independence Party, UKIP, 8,280. Stuart Thomas Hay, the Conservative Party candidate, 7,105. Jim Murray, Liberal Democrat, 791. Bridget Maeve Phillipson, Labour Party, 21,000. $21,218. Alan Michael David Robinson, the Green Party, 1,095. And that Bridget May Phillipson has been duly elected to serve as a member for the said constituency.
So her majority has gone up by just 2,000, and it's a safe Labour seat in Sunderland South. But the interesting thing is, look at what's happened to the other parties. UKIP have gone into second place. 8,280.
Thank you very much.
Their share of the vote, 21%. And the Liberal Democrats fall out of sight. Let's just hear her speech.
Who have worked so hard once again to ensure a quick declaration.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.
What do you make of this prediction in our broadcasters' exit polls tonight of only 2 seats for UKIP tonight?
Well, to be honest, I think it's wise that everybody I've heard so far commenting on the exit poll is advising caution, because it's certainly that 2 seats certainly doesn't accord with my experience on the ground. I was in Thanet South yesterday with Nigel Farage, and he was literally being mobbed by voters. His popularity there was obvious to see. I've had colleagues today in Dudley North, Bill Etheridge, MEPs fighting that seat, and again, the people I spoke to are convinced that he's going to take it. We know that Douglas Carswell is almost certain to hold on to his seat. I've been campaigning myself in Rochester and Strood, and I think Mark Reckless is on course to keep that. So my feeling is that it is caution is the right way to go, really. But of course, I'm obviously delighted with the Sunderland result. 21%, amazing, higher than we've polled, and I've always said throughout this campaign that the polls were definitely underestimating the strength of the UKIP vote. And to get that kind of a second place above the Conservatives in Labour Heartland is very encouraging.
Well, just to recap that.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.
I think we're joined by Paul Nuttall. I hope we are, anyway. The Deputy Leader of UKIP. Miss Nuttall, good evening. Thanks for joining us. You'll have heard of this total disaster in Darlington, where 89 people weren't able to vote for UKIP. That'll have damaged your chances in Darlington.
I'm not sure it'll change the outcome of the result in Darlington.
What is your...
It's not great.
As you know, we said early on, it's very difficult, and you'll appreciate why, to predict UKIP's vote, because you're the new kids on the block. But from your information, how do you think you've done? Have you got 5 seats? Has Nigel Farage won, do you think?
I think Nigel Farage has won. And I think he's probably won by a bigger margin than what people think. I think we're going to do well in Kent. We're going to do well in Essex. And what we're finding is that we're performing well in our target seats. We've got lots of pledges, and we've had a really good day getting out our vote. I must say, though, David, I do think that your exit poll is wrong. I really can't see the Conservatives getting over 300 seats, and I can't see Labour falling under 260. Equally, UKIP will get more than 2 seats.
Why do you say that? Why do you think it's wrong? From information you've gleaned from your party workers, or what?
Well, I'm just not... 11 opinion polls in the past 2 days tell us one thing, and your exit poll tells us another. And the feeling that we're getting on the ground is that it is pretty tight between the Conservatives and Labour. And equally with UKIP, as you said before, the caveat is you really don't know how UKIP is going to do. You know, we are going to get more than 2 seats tonight. We're buoyant, we're confident, and as I say, we're going into the next half of this decade looking to change British politics.
And in this part of the decade, the first half, is a result that gives you a lot of votes and, say, half a dozen seats, is that fair to UKIP, or do you think the whole system needs changing?
Well, put it this way, if we get 4 million votes tonight, and that is possible, and say we roll in with 6 or 7 seats, then I think that the issue of electoral reform will have to be back on the agenda, because you could end up in a situation whereby the Liberal Democrats pretty much get half our vote, but they come in with around 25 seats. I think that's an affront to democracy. It's wrong, and I do hope that this will be the last general election that we have with the first-past-the-post system, which was in effect designed for 2 parties. David, the biggest argument that people have for upholding first-past-the-post is that it produces stable government. Well, it didn't last time, and it probably won't this time either.
If the figures work out this way at the end of the night, would you want UKIP to do a deal with David Cameron over an EU referendum, and would you be prepared to support him, given that he's offered one?
Well, we've said no coalitions, no pacts, but if we did fall down the side of a deal, it would be on a vote-by-vote basis. And we've said that our red line is simply this: we want an EU referendum, we want it to be fair, with equal, with the question not being loaded, with equal money on each side, equal airtime, and ensuring that certain people don't vote. I mean, there are about 4 million migrants in this country who've benefited from EU freedom and movement of people who can vote in local elections, but not a general election. We don't believe they should vote in a referendum either. But equally, we want that referendum before December the 31st this year. Let's have it done. Let's get it out the way, because we don't want to be handing over another £50 billion to Brussels, which will happen if we hold out till 2017.
Sounds a bit of a dotted red line rather than a firm red line.
No, it is a red line. We want a referendum. We've waited since 1975. It was the year before I was born. I don't see why this generation should be stuck by a decision which was made by the generation before. It's time for that referendum. It's time for that referendum now.
Thank you very much, Paul Nuttall, for joining us.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.
And my congratulations to the Daily Mail and the Sun. They're geniuses. They understand politics beautifully. They think the UKIP vote splits the Tory vote.
No, I can't. No, I can't.
God help
us. You sounded quite angry.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.
What he wants to do is absent himself until the count here. That won't be until well after 6 o'clock this morning, we imagine, although we may get some signs of movement before that. A quick look at who else is joining us in the hall there. We'll give you a quick shot of one party that have already made their presence known here. They are the Al-Zababist Nation of Oog. They're also contesting this seat of South Thanet. Good luck to them. At the moment, you can see they haven't got much to say, but they are now already with us. Let's go to perhaps the safest UKIP seat there is around, and that's the seat of Clacton. Douglas Carswell, the the MP, was the MP there, hoping to retain his seat in this count. Douglas, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Extraordinary exit polls coming out tonight from the Broadcasters Collective. 2 seats predicted for UKIP. Yours must surely be one of those. You have the safest majority of all of them. Who do you think the other one will be?
Well, let's wait and see. I mean, there's plenty of slip between cup and lip, and the counting's only just started, so I'm not taking anything for granted. But what I think is truly extraordinary is when you reflect on the fact that 5 years ago, UKIP polled just over 3%. We're now on the verge of getting between 3 and 4 million votes. That's an extraordinary leap forward for UKIP.
Yeah, but in the first past the post system, that's not much use to you in terms of getting seats in the House of Commons, is it?
Well, if it's the case that UKIP gets, say, 4 million votes and only a clutch of seats, I think that's more of a reflection on how dysfunctional our political system is than a reflection on UKIP's campaign tactics. I mean, isn't it extraordinary how, if you look at both the UKIP vote and the Green vote combined, we're talking about sort of 5.5 million people who are, it looks as if they're going to be woefully underrepresented by a system of politics that gives Alex Salmond and Nicola Sturgeon's party almost 10 times the representation. So I mean, I think, you know, UKIP has done well in terms of increasing its share of the votes, but I think this could raise some profound questions about the nature of our political system.
But certainly the idea of voting reform is pretty near the top of many people's agendas post the election results tomorrow. OK, let's talk about that a bit then. In terms of the momentum of UKIP as a political force, you're coming second now in 2 of those Sunderland constituencies. That hasn't happened before. So there will be, it seems, something of a showing around the country that you could interpret as to increase popularity. Where do you take that momentum then?
Well, I think it's interesting that UKIP seems to be, in its early days, seems to be doing well in places where the Conservative Party doesn't stand a chance of ever forming a credible alternative to Labour. Now, if it is the case that UKIP is doing well in the north of England, I think between now and 2020 we can really structure the party around trying to replace the Labour Party as a credible alternative in seats where, frankly, the Conservative Party has not been up to the job for a generation or more. And I think that's a huge opportunity. If it's the case that we get 4 million votes in this election, I think we're in a very good position between now and 2020 to become a serious player in seats where, frankly, 5 years ago we barely had a presence.
Well, what about leadership, though? South Thanet's going to have its count much later on this morning, but there is a very strong chance that Nigel Farage will not get his seat in the Commons. What are you going to do about that? He's the only figure that the public really associate with UKIP and really associate with the character of the party. Well,
I spent a lot of time helping in target seats. I spent time in Thanet South. I'm pretty confident that he's going to do it. He's been an extraordinary inspirational figure. For 20 years he's at times stood alone against the political establishment, and I'm pretty confident that he's going to become a Member of Parliament in the early hours of Friday morning. But let's wait and see.
Briefly, Douglas Carswell, you're a very popular MP in your constituency. Everyone knows that. You could have won it under any colour. Are you missing the Conservative Party at all?
We'll find out. Am I missing the Conservative Party?
Are you missing your previous party? Yeah.
I've got lots of friends in the Conservative Party. There are lots of good people who still vote Conservative, but I don't miss the Conservative Party at all.
Douglas Carswell, thanks very much indeed for joining us tonight on the line there from Clacton. Let's go live to...
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.
A little eerie up here, David. We're joined by Diane James of UKIP. What has UKIP achieved tonight?
Some seriously very good seconds in a number of places, consistent with some of our strategic objectives to actually build that bedrock of second places at this stage and then really capitalise on that in 2020 or before.
You had hoped to take Castle Point. You haven't.
We had.
There's a recount at Thurrock. That's another seat you had hoped to take. And there seems to be a lot of reports coming out that Nigel Farage may have lost in Thanet South. So it's not a great night.
Well, I wasn't aware that we'd actually gone to a recount in Thurrock. I'm still very confident that Tim will take that. Certainly, the messages I'm getting are that Nigel will still take Thanet South. So again, I would rebut what you just said.
Right.
But Castle Point, you know, come on, let's be honest. You asked
Sure.
for trust in politics a couple of days ago. Yes, it's disappointing.
Overall, the night's been disappointing for you, hasn't it? I mean, the exit poll, which is now proving to be unerringly accurate so far, said you started this election with 2 MPs and you look like that's what you finish with. So
well, I'm still
no change.
Well, we haven't even. I think I asked you the question a few minutes ago. I'm not even sure we've got to 10% of the seats being declared yet. Yeah. Still a lot to play for. Some of the seats that I still would like to see us win: Hayward and Middleton, for instance, Dudley North, and some personal favourites as well.
If Mr Farage loses in Thanet South, he says he's going to stand down as leader. Time for a female leader of UKIP?
No doubt, I'm sure. I mean, you know, he's got a choice in terms of Paul Nuttall, Suzanne Evans and such. Before you ask the question, I've already ruled myself out.
You've ruled yourself out? You must be a little bit disappointed in Eastleigh, where you fought a very credible by-election there. The Tories have taken that now.
Well, they haven't taken it yet. I understand they're in the midst of counting.
You're absolutely right. But it's our reports are that they are the favourites as things stand at this moment.
Well,
but you're quite right. They haven't yet won.
And the text I've got is that the Liberal Democrats are subdued, but that would follow the pattern in terms of their results so far.
You would be badly wounded if you lost Nigel Farage, wouldn't you?
I'd be very disappointed. Very disappointed.
Let's go to...
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.
Member of Parliament election, which has been held today on Thursday, the 7th of May 2015. I, Ian Davidson, being the acting returning officer at the above election, do hereby give notice that the number of votes recorded for each candidate at said election is as follows. Carswell, John Douglas Wilson, UK Independence Party, 19,642. Grace David Orbiton, Liberal Democrats, 812. Southall Christopher John, Green Party, 1,184. Watling Giles Francis, the Conservative Party candidate, 16,205. Young Timothy John, Labour Party, 6,364. The number of ballot papers rejected...
Sir Douglas Carswell, who defected from the Conservatives to UKIP and fought a by-election in Clacton and became an MP for UKIP in Clacton, has held on, widely predicted that he would, to that seat in Clacton. The Conservatives, 3,000, just over 3,000 behind him. There's Douglas Carswell, and if we get the full results... and show the...
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.
But back as the Prime Minister and head of a majority government. We're expecting a result in Morley, which is where Ed Balls, the Shadow Chancellor, is standing. And I think that result is due in just a moment. We'll bring it to you as soon as we have it, but we are getting reports that Ed Balls is in a bit of trouble there. We'll get that to you as soon as we can. In the meantime, a result for a seat that's of interest, certainly where UKIP are concerned, Rochester and Stroud, and this is what happened.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to declare the result for the Rochester and Stroud constituency. I, Neil Davis, being the acting returning officer for the constituency, hereby give notice that the number of votes given for each candidate is as follows. Prue Bray, Liberal Democrat, 1251. Daniel John Terence Byrne, Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition, 202. Clive Bryn Malcolm Gregory, Green Party, 1516. Nushaba Parveen Khan, Labour Party, 10,396. Mark John Reckless, UK Independence Party, UKIP, 16,009. And Kelly Jane Tolhurst, the Conservative Party candidate, 23,142. That was 23,142. And declare that Kelly Jane Tolhurst has been elected as the Member of Parliament for the constituency of Rochester and Stroud. Congratulations,
So a very disappointing result for UKIP, but a very good result for Kelly Tolhurst and the Conservatives. Let's have a closer look at those figures, and we'll have the result, by the way, from Ed Balls' seat in just a few moments. They're not declared yet, but as I say, the strong rumour there is that Ed Balls, the Shadow Chancellor, may have lost his seat in Morley and Outwood, but as soon as that result comes in, we'll be there straight away. In the meantime, Emily, let's have a look at the Rochester figures.
Well, this was the second of those.
Let's leave that here now, Robert. Thanks very much indeed. Robert Nisbet there, and myself still waiting for a result out of Thanet South. Let's catch up with what's on the scoreboard now with Ed Conway.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, it was just a point, actually, that Robert raised a moment ago, the fact that Nigel Farage and the UKIP are saying they're pleased with the increase in the share of the vote. Well, have a look at it. This is the change in the share of the vote for UKIP, and you can see it is a big increase, 9.3%, particularly when you compare it to what's happened to the Lib Dems. The problem, of course, for UKIP is this, the disparity between the one seat they have gained for that big increase, the unprecedented increase that they have enjoyed. Let's have a look at just one other thing, which is the number of seats. Actually, I'll show you quickly two things. First of all, these are the targets that they were aiming for. There's always got to be one more thing. These are the targets that UKIP were aiming for. They were hoping this was going to be a bit more purple than it really has turned out. Aylesbury, Camborne and Redruth, they did get Clacton, of course. Douglas Carswell, of course, he had it as through a by-election, but he managed to get it through a general election. But they haven't picked up the seats that they're hoping for. So, of course, still waiting for Thanet South, still waiting for what happens to Nigel Farage. But here's the key point. They haven't necessarily converted those votes into seats in the House of Commons. Of course, we have a first-past-the-post system. Instead, what they've done is they've got an awful lot of seats where they've come in second place. I've pulled out now all of the seats around the country where UKIP have come in second place. And just look at this. Previous to this general election, they hadn't come in second place anywhere. But as of now, they were the runners-up in all of these seats around the country, to Labour, to the Conservatives. Now, that has caused chaos with the rest of the results because it's disrupted what you'd normally expect to swing across from Labour to the Conservatives. As a result, they are second place in a lot of these places, but they don't have the seats to speak of, except for this one so far, Clacton. Can they add to that? Can Nigel Farage add to it? It's going to be tight for them, and they have, in a sense, fallen victim to the first-past-the-post system.
Conley there, thank you very much indeed. Well, very difficult, of course, for the newspapers to reflect on this fast-moving situation, but I want to take you through some of the front pages because, of course, they reacted to that first drama of the evening, which was the exit poll. So taking you through them, we've got The Independent, picturing David Cameron there. The Independent, as I say, describes the Conservatives' victory as stunning, but says the Prime Minister will rule a divided kingdom, of course, anticipating that performance by the SNP. The Guardian pictures all the party leaders, how many of them will still be in charge of their party in maybe even a few hours' time. It describes the result as a poll shocker for Labour. It adds that all the parties will be holding inquests. And the Times, if we've got that for you, it shows the Prime Minister there pointing to victory. It says it also mentions that Labour have been virtually wiped out in Scotland. There's also the I newspaper, the Junior Independent, which says David Cameron will rule a divided kingdom, also picking up on the extraordinary performance by the Scottish National Party. The Metro's headline, there we have it, same picture. Cam's the man, the next Prime Minister. And we've got the Telegraph. Mr Cameron is pictured on the front of the Telegraph as well. Let's pause there and bring in my paper reviewers. I'm McElvoy from The Economist and Owen Jones from The Guardian. Owen, I mean, looking at those front pages, they've done quite well because it was that exit poll. We're still waiting to see how the seats finally fall, but that was explosive, and what a blow it was to Labour and Ed Miliband.
Yeah, it was catastrophic for Labour, and it was firstly catastrophic for the polling industry because nobody saw this coming by any stretch.
Well, bizarrely, I mean, in their defence, the vote share is pretty much neck and neck, but it's the way because there are so many smaller parties involved.
We'll see how the vote share pans out.
We have to wait and see.
Which will be fascinating, and that, again, I think reopens the whole question about the electoral system. Speaking as someone who voted against the alternative a few years ago, and I think me and many others will be reconsidering whether or not the current electoral system can can hold. But nonetheless, this is a disaster for Labour. In Scotland,
already on his way, talking as he arrives at the count. Let's listen.
But it's a lovely day.
And what do you think of the results so far?
Well, I think it's remarkable that, given the astonishing results that we've had, and the fact that everything's been wrong about a clear majority Conservative government, including me, there are 4 million people out there that have voted for UKIP. It's a lot of people, and I'm struck that a party that gets half of the vote in one part of the United Kingdom gets nearly 100% of the seats, and another party that, as I say, gets 4 million votes is going to have very little representation. And I think longer term that's going to make people quite frustrated. I think the desire for change will be very strong after this.
But you're not going to be in a position to be able to change it without more MPs in Parliament, surely?
It's going to be very difficult because the establishment will not want change. I mean, that is absolutely perfectly clear. They will not want change. However, the election cycles in Britain being what they are, you know, we've got Welsh Assembly elections and London elections and who knows by-elections, and so I don't know. And I look at the sort of percentage scores UKIP's getting in South Wales, in the northeast of England, in parts of the country where we didn't even exist 5 years ago, basically. So I think UKIP supporters will be very pleased that we've scored a lot of votes, but there has been a change in our vote. There's no doubt that quite a lot of our older voters who've supported us in the county elections and supported us in the European elections have, for fear of the SNP, left us for the moment and voted Conservative. What is really clear is that the pickup in vote has been our success on social media, and it's now the under-30s that are beginning to vote for UKIP in significant numbers. And I think what that means for UKIP as a party, I think it's going to change quite radically. I think it's going to be become a more radical campaigning party for political reform, social reform, and I think what you'll see UKIP become is a very young, very active political force. So yes, there will be disappointment, but as far as the UKIP story is concerned, we're just going to begin a different chapter.
Will UKIP need a different type of...
Very interesting points that are being made by Nigel Farage. I thought, Laura, really, when you think about, you know, the point about radical, actually saying what the story tells, and will this be a hold for the Conservatives?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm declaring the results of the election of a Member of Parliament for South Thanet. I, William Alexander, being the returning officer of the above election, do hereby give notice that the number of votes recorded for each candidate at the said election is as follows. Nigel Anthony Askew, commonly known as Nigel Askew, We Are the Reality Party, 126. Ruth Angela Bailey, Manston Airport Independent Party, 191. Robert George, we got the wrong one there. Graham George Birchall, Party for a United Thanet, 63. Robert George Bowler, commonly known as Abu Obadiah Zebediah, Al-Zebedist Nation of Oog, 30. Ian Driver, the Green Party, 1,076. Nigel Paul Farage, UKIP, 16,026. Craig McKinley, the Conservative Party candidate, 18,838. Dean Bert McCastry, Independent, 61. Alistair James Hay Murray, commonly known as Al Murray, 318. William Thomas Scobie, commonly known as Will Scobie, Labour Party, 11,440. Russell James Timpson, Liberal Democrats, 932. The number of ballot papers rejected was as follows: a total of 163. The percentage turnout was 69.85. I do therefore declare that Craig McKinley is duly elected as Member of Parliament for South Thanet constituency.
There's the result from South Thanet, and Nigel Farage, the leader of UKIP. Back to the declaration there in South Thanet, because I think Mr Farage is about to speak.
The definition of whether you're having a good day or a bad day, and many of you may think I'm having a bad day, but let me tell you, 5 years ago, on election day, I was in intensive care after an aeroplane crash, so compared to that, this feels pretty damned good. I do congratulate the Prime Minister. He has secured a Tory majority, something that nobody thought was possible. And there was an earthquake in this election, and it happened north of the border. It happened in Scotland. And I think what you saw were a lot of voters so scared of that Labour SNP coalition that they shifted towards the Conservatives. And that included some of the people here who'd voted UKIP last time round. But I saw another shift in this election, and I saw UKIP, the party, apparently, for the retired old colonels, suddenly as the party for people under 30, particularly young working women. There is a big change going on in politics. And I think what's really interesting, we've always been here to believe that Britain needs to get back its democracy. We shouldn't be governed from Brussels. But what is interesting is what's happening within our democracy in this country. We've got a party in Britain who got 50% of the vote in one of the regions and nearly 100% of the seats. And we've got another party that scored nearly as many votes, 4 million, as won us the European elections last year, that has finished up with 1 seat in Parliament. And I think the time has come for real, genuine, radical political reform, and it's UKIP that'll be the party that leads it. On a personal level, on a professional level, I expressed today a degree of disappointment. On a personal level, I feel an enormous weight has been lifted from my shoulders, and I've never felt happier. Thank you.
Nigel Farage says he's never felt happier, and that's after losing that contest in South Thanet. But we all know what he means, Andrew, don't we?
Yes, I think they're...
Let's listen to what he's got to say first, shall we?
I intend to take the summer off, enjoy myself a little bit, not do very much politics at all, and there will be a leadership election for the next leader of UKIP in September, and I will consider, over the course of this summer, whether to put my name forward to do that job again. One thing I'm certain of,
One thing I'm absolutely certain of is there are opportunities coming up electorally. I look at the Welsh Assembly elections next year, the Scottish Parliament the year after, the London Assembly elections. Goodness knows what by-elections may come. And I think those 4 million people out there are pretty loyal. They're voting for us, not because they think we're slightly less worse than somebody else. They're voting for us because they believe in us. And I think the next chapter of UKIP has begun. I want us to reform our membership model. I want to make this a party that you can join for £10 and not £30. I want us to recognise the huge success we've had in this campaign on social media and work even harder on that. And I think you'll see a younger, more vibrant, energetic UKIP campaigning not just to get our country back from Brussels, not just to control immigration sensibly with the Australian-style point system, but one that actually wants to see a fairer society that helps those who are out there working hard and trying their best to have a better life, and an electoral system that actually engages people and gets people thinking that when they vote, they might just get a government and a parliament that is representative of their views. Thank you.
Nigel, this way. Darren first.
So that is Nigel Farage in Margate. What do we make of that, Laura? So he's standing down, but he may stand again.
Well, when is toast not toast? He promised consistently he would go if he didn't get this seat. He would resign from the leadership. Except now we have a sort of
narrative that UKIP takes Tory votes, completely blown out of the water by last night's result. Perfectly clear.
So you will resign then if you lose today?
Are you calling me a liar?
No.
Is that a commitment?
Well, thank you. What do you make, Mr Farage, of the national picture with the Conservatives apparently forming a...
Well, I just think nothing will change. I think we're going to go on running massive budget deficits. I don't think very much is going to change. I would like to see the Conservative Prime Minister break one promise, which is the maintenance of the Barnett formula, and he pledged, before the Scottish referendum result that would continue, and that strikes me as being ludicrous. So I hope he'll do that, and I think there'll be many on the Conservative backbenches that will urge him to do so.
And we'll let you go to your account, but could you tell us what you think about the SNP surge in Scotland and what that means for the UK?
Well, it shows political change can happen, but it's odd, isn't it, that you get a first-past-the-post system where a party can get a minority share of the vote and win nearly 100% of the seats, and by the same contrast, you can get a party that wins, clearly the third popular share of the vote and hardly anything in the House of Commons. So I do think the system is bust, and I do think there'll be great demand for it to change. But overall, yeah, the pollsters were wrong. It's a Conservative government. I just think very little will change.
Are you disappointed with UKIP's performance?
There's a long list of UKIPers begging you to stay. Paul Nuttall, Suzanne Evans, Aaron Banks, Steve Crowler.
Very sweet,
Could you be persuaded?
Nigel Farage speaking very frankly as ever, but raising some important questions about the nature of the Westminster system and the way that it produces lots of seats for some and then maybe not so many for others, even though they are on a very big share of the vote. Suzanne Evans is with me, Mr Farage's colleague. That point, Suzanne, I think is one that lots of people will kind of reflect on.
Yes, absolutely. How can it possibly be fair that we're going to take 3.5 million votes and get one seat in the face of possibly two, as the way it looks at it at the moment, and yet the SNP can get 56 seats with 1.5 million votes? It simply isn't fair, and this is something that we have been calling for quite some time now, and I think the majority of people in the country will see that it's completely wrong. The Conservatives are looking to be set to be winning a majority. I think actually they haven't won it fair and square. I think they have won purely because of the fear of a potential Labour SNP coalition. And that's certainly what I found out on the doorstep in our target seats, that people have very much wanted to vote for UKIP, but they have been so terrified of the breakup of the union, of the SNP being able to hold Parliament to ransom effectively, that unfortunately they didn't feel able to put the cross in the UKIP box. And I think tomorrow when we see some of the council results, I think we'll see a much stronger performance for UKIP, because people will have been able to vote with their heart rather than their head.
You believe, Suzanne Evans, that was the deciding factor, fear of the SNP?
I think it was. I absolutely think it was. That's certainly my experience. It was actually quite depressing talking to some voters who said, I really wanted to vote for you. I love what you stand for. Your policies were great, but I'm sorry, I just can't let those people in.
Certainly some Conservative candidates we've been talking to in the last couple of weeks did feel that in the closing period of this long campaign, that the SNP strategy that was played, according to Suzanne Evans, very effectively by the Conservatives, was a wedge that was driving some UKIP waverers back towards them. However, whether it will have been proven to be the top deciding factor, that's quite a claim to make at this stage. However,
Well,
Lord
I
Ashcroft...
think we'll see when we see the council elections tomorrow and see if there's any discrepancy there between the amount of vote share we have for council elections as opposed to the national share for Parliament. But we've done incredibly well. I mean, this night is a very bittersweet night for us, I think. I'm devastated that Mark Reckless has lost his seat. Devastated. He's been a fabulous constituency MP. He will be an extraordinarily hard act to follow. I'm also bitterly disappointed that the Conservatives, not just in Rochester and Stroud, but elsewhere in the country as well, have run a really vicious, nasty and bitter campaign against UKIP. Perhaps not as vicious and nasty as the one that Labour have been running against us in their strongholds, where we've clearly been holding their feet to the fire. The fact I think we have, in fact, had more second places in seats that have been won by Labour than the Conservatives shows again that we do not just take Tory votes. We've always said that, and I think tonight that is proof positive.
Suzanne, good to see you. Thanks very much again for coming in. Suzanne Evans there of UKIP with her thoughts on...
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party. You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.